All right, guys, I've got a good one for you today. This is a Blix bike. It is a fat tire, dual battery, super long tank of a bike, and it is Cycles of Sweden. Let's go ahead, let's bust this thing open and see what this bike is all about. So there you go, we got the Blix Ultra put together, and this is the dual battery version. So you're gonna get over 1,300 watt hours of actual power, which will give you right around 80 miles of range according to Blix, which makes this bike completely versatile whenever it comes to commuting, getting around town, or going out and hitting your trails. So looking up front, first you're gonna see is some Zoom hydraulic brakes, and that's a huge benefit. I've had really good success with Zoom brakes. These come with 180 millimeter rotors front and back, which is more than enough to stop a bike of this size. And then looking next to the brakes, you are going to get something really unique to e-bikes, and that is the micro shift setup. This is an 8-speed micro shift setup, and then also you get an 8-speed micro shift 26 rear derailleur along with an 8-speed cassette. Now the only thing with the micro shift is I do wish that this rear derailleur had a clutch built into it to prevent that chain from slapping, because as you guys can see, I have this set up in what I'm calling the Blix Ultra mountain bike setup. That means that there's no fenders and there's no rear rack, and then I also didn't install the headlight. Those are all things that are options and partially come with this bike, and we'll go over that here later. But I really like this mountain bike setup because this bike really does have a mountain bike feel to it, especially with the slack head tube angle. And speaking of the slack head tube angle, you are going to get a hydraulic fork up front. If we look further over here on the handlebars, you are going to get a very small screen. You might be familiar with this screen if you know what the brand Super 73 is. It's a really popular moped style bike, and they use this similar type of screen on a lot of their bikes. I'm not a huge fan of it, but if you're a minimalist and you want as little information or as little on your handlebars as possible, this screen is going to be for you. So you're not going to get a lot of information all at once, but I believe they really want you to use the Blix app, which will display all that information all at once. And then right next to the screen, you are going to get a thumb throttle, and then on both sides, you are going to get these ergonomic lock-on grips. Now this bike is quite a bit longer, so your reach is going to be longer than what most other e-bikes are. It's still very, very comfortable, but they installed a shorter stem to compensate for that. But the benefit of a shorter stem is you're going to have a little bit more control, especially if you're out trail riding or riding at higher speeds. Now, as you can see, this is a fat tire e-bike. It does come with 26-inch by 4-inch wide tires, and both front and back do have those disc brakes installed. Now, if we take a look back behind the handlebars, you are going to get this really unique top tube here. It kind of gives it a cross between a step over and a step through, and it also gives it a really cool look. Down below that, if you are a single battery buyer, then you will get the battery that comes down in here. If you do buy the dual battery version like this, you'll get that battery, plus you'll get another battery in the back here. Both of these can be removed, and you can run one at a time if you'd like. But the nice thing about this battery setup is it's going to give you that extended range, but also you have one power button on this back battery here. If you turn that on, it'll turn on both batteries, and it'll also turn on the system. So you don't have to worry about turning on two batteries whenever you get on this bike. One button will turn on everything and you're good to go. Now this bike does come with a bigger seat, so if you like larger seats, this one will probably be perfect for you. But one thing I really do like is this handle on the back. It makes maneuvering this bike really easy. So if you get into a situation where you need to turn the back end around, you can do it really easy by grabbing this handle on the back of the seat. Now going back all the way to the back of the bike, you are going to get a 750 watt motor. This thing is really powerful. Now this bike does come stock as a Class 2 e-bike. In order to make this bike a Class 3 e-bike, you do have to register the bike, and you also have to sync it with the app. And then inside the app, you can actually toggle Class 2 or Class 3. Now, I did have a little bit of trouble with the app, and there are a few bugs in the app, and we'll go over those here in just a few minutes. Now, as you can see, the back of this bike is very long, and the reason for that is this extra battery has to have extra room spaced out from the back tire. And not only that, it allows you to add on a really big rack, just like this one that's pictured here. And this rack allows this bike to be really modular, so you can add things like baskets, child seats, flat seats, and then you also have the option to add a basket up front. Now, if we go back up front here just a little bit, this does have a very large front chainring, and even going 28, 29 miles an hour, I never got any ghost pedaling out of this bike. So the reason why you're not gonna get ghost pedaling at those higher speeds of closer to 30 miles an hour is because of the really well-sized 8-speed cassette along with this front chainring. So the benefits of this bike are quite obvious. It's a beautiful looking bike. It's got these really large fat tires which make it super comfortable. You're gonna get some nice things like microshift setup and also some zoom brakes. And you're also gonna get a lot of power. This bike is very quick. Some of the downfalls of this bike that I have found is the major one is the registration with the app. And I know that other people have had issues with this that have reviewed this bike, so I'm not the first one to actually experience this. So the issue that I had is I registered this bike online and then I went to go sync it up with the app, but the downfall is the number that was tied to this particular bike was not the one that was tied to the actual serial number on this bike. So I couldn't even get access to be in the app at all. And it took several days for Blix to actually sort this out for me. So later that afternoon, whenever I got back to the bike, I was actually able to sync it up to the app. And I was really excited about that because that meant that I could go from a Class 2 to a Class 3 bike. Now the downfall is I found a bug in the app. You switch from Class 2 to Class 3, you click save, and it works in that moment. But as soon as you exit the app, power off this bike, and then you go to turn it back on, you're back to a Class 2. It doesn't actually save it on the internal computer system on this bike. Honestly, I don't want to use the app every time I get on this bike. Most of the time I get on my e-bikes, I just jump on them and I want them to work without having to go into my smartphone and actually turn anything on. So not being able to retain the Class 3 setting was a huge bummer for me. That's something that I'm hoping that Blix fixes in the near future. Now the other downfall on this bike is the fenders that come on here. They are just standard plastic fenders, which is just fine, but the rear fender comes with these rivets all the way across it, and it also has 2 pre-drilled holes. And this is with the assumption that you're gonna be buying a rear rack. Well, not all riders are gonna be buying that rear rack, so you're gonna have these weird looking rivets and 2 holes in your fenders. And I just think that Blix should have designed the way that the wire runs for the rear light on the rack a little bit differently. Now, another downfall of this bike is where they place the controller. Having the controllers down there on the bottom underneath the bike, just kind of simply wrapped in some type of a heat shrink type material. I don't know how weather resistant those are. And not only that, if you're gonna be doing any mountain biking with this, that's a potential spot that you could hit on a log or a rock. And I would hate to see somebody damage their controller or their splitter because it's stored right there. All right, so now that we know a little bit more about the bike with its benefits and its downfalls, let's go ahead and take this out for a spin and see how this bike performs. All right, let's go ahead and take the Blix Ultra out for a ride. This bike does accelerate really well. I actually really like how fast this bike accelerates on flat ground. I can't wait to see what this thing will actually do on the 19% grade. And I really like this slack head tube angle. Just these bars are a little too swooped back for my liking. The brakes, of course, work really well on this bike too, being that they're Zoom brakes and they're hydraulic. Now the throttle will act like a Class 3 where it'll only take you up to 20 miles an hour. Cut off around 28 to 30 miles an hour. But it got up there really smooth being that it's in a Class 3 mode. The bike feels really comfortable going down the road. The ergonomic grips feel pretty good on this. I'm usually not an ergonomic grip guy, but These actually feel pretty good. All right, here we are at the bottom of the big hill that I always go up with all my e-bikes. We're gonna see what the Blix Ultra will do in pedal assist 5. Let's go ahead and give it a shot. All right, we're gonna take off with a little bit of throttle, and then we're gonna just start pedaling into this. We're gonna put this in an easier gear. Again, this is the hill that goes up to 19%. This is about 3 to 4% right here. We quickly ramp up to about 12%. And I'm already down to 20 miles an hour. We'll see if this does it as good as the Truxus. The Truxus bike is definitely one of the best ones that I've had with the hill climbing. This is getting to the 15%, and right past this driveway is the 19. We continue to shift down. We're at 14 miles an hour. Now I'm just kind of spinning the pedals. We're at 10, going back up to 11. It's holding at 11. Nope, went down to 10, back to 11, and we're at the top. And yeah, this bike did about what I thought it would do. Definitely not the most powerful, but powerful enough to climb a giant hill like that and really not have a problem doing it. All right, we're gonna get up to speed here, about as much as we can, and we're gonna see what the Blix bike can do on a downhill coast. We're at about 23 right now. All right, let's just coast down, see what speed we can get up to. There's 31, 36, 39, 39. Usually pick up a little bit of speed here. 39. 39 was the magic number. That's what we got up to. Definitely not the fastest. It almost seemed like there was a lot of resistance coming down that hill with it. But overall, I'm really happy with the comfort level of this bike and the braking quality of this bike. And the shifting is really good, really crisp and precise. Just the bike is a real nice ride. I have zero complaints about how this bike feels and rides whenever you get it out on the road. Just some minor things with the app and the software that's installed on this that can make this bike so much better. And not to mention also the way that they stored the controller and the battery splitter. That could use some work in maybe the next version of the Ultra. Hide that a little bit better, protect it from the elements a little bit better. And I think that they'll have a huge winner on their hands. So it's gotten a little bit colder around here, and it's been about a month and a half since I originally started recording my Blix review. So in that amount of time, I've had some trouble with this bike, and that's what I want to address in this point in the video. As you guys know, I had some major complaints about where they place the controller, the app, how it works, and how you have to actually use it to be able to go from a class 2 to a class 3. Now, my next complaint is the overall price of this bike. This setup right here with the dual batteries, the extended rack on the back, and the guards for if you were to put a seat on the back of this so someone's feet wouldn't get caught in the spokes. This, at the time, whenever I received this bike, was right around $2,600 plus shipping. That is a very expensive e-bike, and especially an e-bike of this style. There's a lot of competition in this realm, but that's not the major problem. The big problem was I had so many issues with this bike that I had to get a brand new controller, and I also had to get a brand new screen for this bike. And so the bike was dead in the water without the brand new controller, and I got it installed, I got it working, minus the front headlight. And as of right now, this bike is fully functioning. I put it through some tests to make sure that it is working correctly, and then I'm hoping that I'm not going to see any further issues down the road. It's really hard for me at this point in time, out of all the bikes that I've reviewed, to give this a solid recommendation. Now, I do think Blix has a platform that could work really well, but I'm just not really sure that they're ready to charge the premium prices that they're actually putting on their bikes. Now, maybe I got a lemon, or maybe some of the other Blix branded bikes are actually a little bit better. But this Ultra, overall, the durability, I haven't been super impressed with. And I hate saying that because I absolutely love these kind of bikes. I was super excited to get this Blix bike. I thought dual battery, long rack, this is gonna be a great commuter bike. And I do think it has that potential, but I think Blix needs to go back to the drawing board on what type of display they're using, how they're hiding their controller, whether or not they should or shouldn't use an app. Me personally, I would say get rid of the app and do everything through a computer screen. That way anybody can use it at any point in time, and don't lock out the user from being able to go to a class 3. Either ship it as a class 3 or ship it as a class 2 and allow the user to change it within the computer system without having to register their bike and go into the app. So with all this said, if you guys are interested in Blix, I do recommend going to their website, checking them out, look at other people's reviews, see what they're saying about them. But this is my review. I had to be completely honest with you. And more than likely, this is probably going to kind of ruin my relationship with Blix. But I hope that they listen to this, and I hope they see that the trouble that I've had with this bike that is pretty expensive compared to their competition, and their competition is a Venton and Ride One Up. So if those brands are going to be selling at a lower price point and giving a higher quality bike than what Blix is offering, Blix has got some work to do. And if you guys are interested in this, I'll put some links down below so you guys can go check them out. But as always, we'll see you guys in the next one.